Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgianna.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Georgianna's escapades finding snowboarding boots, and we're calling this episode When the Boot Doesn't Fit. And you can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram, and you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we'll do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Yay! That's what naturally wanted to come up. I'm so excited about the boot when the boot doesn't fit. But before we go there, let's make ourselves big, whatever that means. Make yourself big. Right? Yeah, and make whatever sounds you need to make to let yourself feel big. And then we make ourselves small. Whatever that means to you. And then we make ourselves big again. I love the facial expressions that go for you. And then we'll make ourselves small. And then this time, we will make ourselves big, but only when you feel the pull. So stay small until you feel some type of sign from your body that your body wants to go into big. And what's the big for this moment? It doesn't mean it has to be just as big as it was before. Maybe it has a different flavor of big. So noticing what that is. And then again, there's permission and invitation to go small when you feel the pull, if you feel the pull.
I felt no pull to shrink at the end.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why I really like playing in this way, where the first couple are like, hey, we're just following an instruction. Go now. Go do the thing now. And then this last part of it was go only if and go when you feel that from your body. So we're trying to practice noticing how our body lets us know that it naturally feels pulled for something versus the I should, I'm being told to, this is what like a responsible person would do, right? So learning the difference in the body, how that feels.
That's neat. And I definitely have times where I specifically want to feel immense and times where I want to feel tiny and cradled. And it's wonderful to be able to notice the difference.
And what I noticed was that my big and my small were different for like each time. Specifically, like I noticed big in round 1 and big in round 2 or 3 felt very different. And my small in round 3 actually wasn't that small, but it was smaller than my big in that round. So that was neat that sometimes I think we have an intellectual framework of what we think big and small means and how it should be. But like when I went to big in that third round, I didn't need to go like, oh, I got to take up all the space. Like there was just something energetic about I'm sturdy here, I'm big. And then when I went to small, it wasn't that I shrunk in, which I did the first 2 rounds. It was just like all the little pieces settling. And like it felt like I was centering. It was neat. And
Yes.
what's cool is I'm doing this with you as well. I can't predict what's going to come up for me in my body and what my body feels pulled to do. So I get delighted by what I discover at the same time as you.
It's such a key, not being able to predict and like extrapolating that into relationship, into everyday experience, into complexities of these little types of exercises and how many layers there can be, right? I didn't think about it till you said it, but my experience of big and small was different with each iteration as well. And it's like an exploration of aspects of yourself, right? The first big felt like a big, scary, like beastie, like raw. And the first small felt very childlike. And the second big felt like immense, like inflated, like taking up all the space in my body and the world. And then the second small felt like a little tiny delicate bird, which is also a very different energy. And then the next big, just like you, felt grounded and centered. And it was like imagining my highest self, like towering 20 stories overhead, just being like a beacon in the universe kind of feeling. And that's so neat that we can create these tiny experiences for ourselves that can feel a lot. Like that's a lot of feeling in a nanosecond.
Yeah. And I want to also speak to you if you were like, I don't have any of those insights from going big and small. Maybe for you, it was more just like the physical movement or the physical space taking of a lot of space, a little space, moving like into expanding my body outward to bringing it inward. It was a purely physical practice. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you did it wrong, right? It's just that as you practice more and as you learn to listen and hear the messages of your body more, you might notice, hey, there's other components that I'm becoming aware of as I move my body, right? But even in the just moving your body, there's goodness there, right? We live in this world where we're either glued to the phone or the computer or whatever. Many of us are like quite rigid in our bodies. So just the simple act of expanding out and moving our posture and changing it and contrasting it with small and like dancing through that a few times, just that in itself is helpful, even if you have no further insights.
Absolutely. I want to emphasize that experience of describing where I felt no connection at all. And I was like, okay, I'll think a big thing and a small thing because I've been told to, and there's no physical connection. That incrementally has shifted to where I can have the experience I just described and I can employ the experience I just described. So like if I find myself in a situation where having tiny little baby bird energy is somehow going to be helpful, I can like employ that consciously. It's amazing.
Yes. Without making tiny baby bird energy bad or wrong. We just know, hey, there's certain times and places where big scary energy and beastly energy is helpful and needed. And sometimes it's tiny bird energy that's needed. Right. And I find that that's when we actually have true power, is when you're aware of all the different ways we can show up that serve us better moment to moment, instead of feeling like they're labeled as good or bad or right or wrong, or have to tuck this away and only show this, right?
Yes. Yeah. And to be able to notice that energy in your body when it arises from something external and also not make it bad or wrong, suddenly it feels like I have monster energy. Suddenly it feels like I'm a timid child who's powerless. Being able to be with that sensation in my body and not make it mean anything is also a gift.
Yes. Like imagine if we felt safe enough sturdy enough, familiar enough with ourselves and our experience, and self-accepting enough to say to someone, I feel big monster energy coming up in me right now. And I just need to stomp around the room. Right? Or I feel like teeny tiny bird energy right now. And I think I just need to like curl up in the corner. All of a sudden, someone can be like, oh, okay, that's what you need. That's what's going on. That's clear. Right?
Yeah.
We were just on a call. We were just on a Priming the Body for Peace call where someone said, I think she was quoting Brene Brown, clarity is kindness. Right? When you can be that clear with someone. And like no part of that is you're making me have monster energy, or you're bringing out the monster in me, or you did something wrong and now I'm going to be passive aggressive with you, or whatever. It's I'm feeling monster energy come up in me right now and I need to stomp around a bit. I need a moment.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
Owning that for ourselves is also so empowering for being able to field it from other people, right? If I'm not in ownership of my own occasional big monster energy and I start feeling that from you, suddenly I'm making it about myself. How can I avoid this uncomfortable feeling? What have I done to cause you to behave in this way? But if I'm able to just be innocently and purely with my monster energy without making it mean anything, then I also don't need to make it mean anything if you're in that energy and I can just witness.
Yes, this was a teaching that helped me a lot, and it took me a while to really get it. And I think what helped me get it was when I started allowing myself to have big monster energy. My big monster energy actually came from that red toque, right? And you might have heard that in other episodes. My alter ego was anger from Inside Out, the movie. And I had to learn how to let myself live in that archetype and not give it any meaning, good or bad. And when I started letting my own monster energy just be a thing and be there, I could see, this isn't about the other person. This isn't personal to the other person. It could be that someone did something that I don't like or triggers up an old body memory for me. And so anger energy is huge right now. But it wasn't because the person is less deserving or less human or less, of a good person. It was just, I'm responding to something that's happening. And when I could see that, I'm like, oh, my monster energy comes up for all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with the goodness of the other person.
Yes.
Right? The worthiness of the other person, the lovability of another person. And then I was like, oh, well, in that case, maybe it's possible that when someone else's big monster energy comes up, that it doesn't have anything to do with me and my lovability and my worthiness. Perhaps they're just dysregulated, like I am sometimes when my big monster energy shows up, right? That made a huge difference in my life.
A key. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And I think for a long time, I was also very ashamed of my tiny bird energy.
Oh, sweetheart.
Right? And because I thought, I always have to be big and strong and independent and know what's happening and be able to handle everything on my own. That is not little baby bird energy.
No.
So I like my baby bird energy now.
I like it too. I also didn't used to like it. And then I was also like, why does nobody take care of me and help me with things?
Because you felt like a big monster that had this sign and like radiating, get the F away from me.
Yeah, do not help me. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Right? And like the visual that I have is you have this baby bird in this nest and this like big ogre monster protecting the nest saying, she does not need you. Get the hell away from us.
Oh, that's me. That's old Steffi.
Yeah. Right? So probably people looked at that big ogre monster and were like, we better get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't seem like she needs help. We should go.
We should go. She seems fine.
Yeah. A little scary. A little standoffish. Yeah.
Which is actually, sadly, that was not clarity.
Yeah.
That was not giving a clear message to people how you were really feeling and what you were really needing and what you were really longing for.
Yes.
Right? That was protective mechanism.
Ironically, then my kindness, like the inverse of that was also true. My kindness was not clear. It was conditional. We should do an episode about that as well one day.
Okay. We will. Let's do that. So my snowboard boots, you want to hear the story?
Yeah. I do. The boot don't fit.
Boot don't fit. So recently I was out snowboarding and oh my gosh, so we had this beautiful, glorious day of snowboarding up at Whistler, which is such a treat. And we finished the day and I was trying to get my foot out of the boot. And like, I didn't tell you this part. Stephanie doesn't know this part of the story. And I got one boot out and the other one, like I just could not get out. And I was like wiggling it. I was doing all the things that I thought I needed to do and it just would not budge. And I'd give it a rest and then I'd ask someone like, can you try to like tug it off of me? And like literally I feel like they were going to pull my foot off. Like I had to say, no, you have to stop now. Meanwhile, I'm like mildly panicking of like, why won't this boot come off? And like, will it be stuck on and will we have to saw it off? Anyways, that's how it started. Eventually I was like shoving my hand in the boot and figuring it out. And I realized, like there's a part, I think part of the boot is broken. Oh. And the thing that the dial you're supposed to be able to turn to loosen the lacing wasn't working, but that wasn't obvious to me at the time. And I was fiddling with the thing and eventually like the whole thing just broke off, which I was sad about, but also really relieved about because my foot could be free.
Yay.
And it felt so good.
That's a really good analogy. Just that sentence. Eventually the thing broke, and which I was very sad about, but also I was happy because my foot was free.
Yes. So you mean we were just talking about my past relationships?
Yes. All of our past relationships.
Yeah. I was so sad that the knob fell off.
The knob.
But I was so relieved that my foot felt free.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was so good. So anyways, my kids want to go snowboarding again. And, I want to go snowboarding again. So now I need new boots. And so I went back to the store where I got these boots a couple years ago. And how did it go? They were like, yeah, that's not cool. That should not have happened. We're really sorry that happened. They were going to take care of it all and just give me new boots. But anyways, the warranty stuff doesn't matter. They handled it great. They wanted to get me into new boots because the boot was unfixable or like unfixable in the time frame that I needed them in. And they just wanted to get me on my way with new boots. So great. So I'm working with this guy and he's trying to help me get set up with new boots. So he said, we're happy to replace your boots. We just want you back up on the mountain again. The only thing is we don't have that many options left right now in your size. You have the most popular women's size. I'm like, okay, no problem. He's like, let me grab you what we have. So he grabbed me something and he said, so just so you know, this pair is a little bit different than your old pair. It's going to be a little bit stiffer. And like, I'm such a newbie. I don't know what that means. I don't know how that's going to affect my riding. But anyways, I try it on. And I put the boot on and it felt really nice. And he's like, yeah, do them up, walk around a little bit, see how it feels. And I'm like, it feels pretty good. And I noticed it felt a bit different, but I didn't necessarily think it was like different bad, just different. So I'm like, let's just walk around a bit. And then he said, how about if I show you another pair? There's one other pair in your size. Would you like to try? And I thought, why not? Let's try. I have learned this through unfortunate situations with buying clothes and shoes, that for me, it's always better off to try on two sizes. And then I get a body feel of the contrast and which feels better. Sometimes like I think it feels good. And then I try the one size bigger or smaller. I'm like, oh, actually, the other one feels better, or vice versa. But anyway, so I said, yes, let's try it on. So first realization is I took the boots off, obviously, to have to be able to try on another pair. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. This is how a boot is supposed to come off your foot. The guy just laughed. He laughed and he was very sweet. He's like, yes, this is how it should feel. And there's another relationship anxiety or relationship like metaphor there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, this is how it should feel. Conscious uncoupling.
Yes, this is how it's meant to feel, you know, like there should be some ease in this process. Yeah. And so I took the boots off, felt really good. And what I really liked about taking that boot off was it reminded me of this is how I want the next boots to feel when I take them off. They need to be able to come off easily. So that horrid experience of having my boot stuck on my foot for 2 hours after snowboarding all day was a feeling that I was like, I don't want to repeat that feeling. I want to go into my next choice making being aware of, I don't want that feeling. I want a better feeling.
Yeah.
So I think that is another thing to take into how we choose relationships in the next relationship, right? So anyways, this guy brings out the next boot and it's a fancy brand and I see the brand and I feel like, oh, I should like this one. This should fit well, you know? And it's a cool looking boot and he's undoing it for me and waiting, you know, giving it to me to put my foot in. I swear to you, like I couldn't even put my foot in. Like I was like, no, but surely like something must be wrong. Maybe it's not unlaced properly. And I'm like trying to put it in and it's starting to feel a little bit like I'm forcing. And in my body, it's giving me that same feeling of when I'm trying to yank the other boot off. Like it's this forcing feeling. That's
it
like
looks so good though. Can't you just break your foot and jam it in there?
You know, my mind is like, it should fit. Like I should be able to get my foot in. I mean, come on, it's the right size. Like it wasn't way too small for me, but somehow in the construction of it and how it was, how my foot works, I don't know. I just couldn't put my foot in. And I got that body feeling again of this is what it feels like to try to push and make something work that doesn't. And so that connected me to the body memory of trying to yank my foot out of the other boot. But it also connected me to I actually started laughing out loud. And this guy probably was like, this lady is nuts. And I said, I think this is a podcast episode. And he's like, what? I said, oh yeah, I co-host podcasts. But anyways, I said, this is like, I said, when the boot doesn't fit. It doesn't even fit. Like I can't even put my foot in. And I said, this represents all the relationships where we try to force our way to make it work in the beginning. When we got all the signs that, or maybe not all, at least some signs, this is not a good fit. It's not fitting. You're having to force. You're having to pretzel yourself. You're having to change yourself in order to make this maybe work. And so I just had this physical aversion to trying to shove my foot in. And I said to him, before I even tried to shove it in, I was like, sorry, like it's not happening. This boot is not happening. He's like, no, you're right. And then when I told him what it reminded me of relationship wise, he just started laughing. He's like, yeah, I've done my fair share of that. He's like, I'm going to remember that when the boot don't fit. And it was, so not only did I have a body memory of what it feels like to try to force a foot into something that doesn't fit, the body memory came up of all those moments I tried to force a relationship to work that wasn't working. And specifically, this was very profound for me because this was a new boot. Like I had no connection to this boot whatsoever. It was the first time trying it on. And I'm thinking, I cannot even get my foot into the boot. I can't even get the boot on. How, even if after I force my foot in, how good do I imagine it's going to feel when my foot is in, let alone on a snowboard all day long? And then how will it feel to try to get that foot out if I can barely get it in, right? And I actually remember in one of my previous relationships, sitting there. It was at the beginning of the relationship, and I was sitting in a personal growth seminar, and I had this like connection moment in my mind. I'm like, I am such a positive, like I'm positive minded, growth oriented person. This person that I feel so in love with is really cynical and negative, and I love all these other parts of them. And I'm like, I'll just make that work. That'll just work somehow. But like there was an inside part that was like, how? How does that work? How do you take two people where one person is really optimistic and growth oriented and someone's just really consistently cynical and negative? And how does that play together? And I was like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Like there's so much chemistry here and like good feeling here and all these other ways it'll be fine. And so I was reconnected to this thing that it took me a long time to learn, is that I feel like relationships take intentional effort. They take work. You're taking two people who have very different lived experiences, trying to learn each other, understand each other, support each other through all sorts of life things that can be hard. Relationships are going to be hard at some point. And I realized like the beginning should be easy. My goodness. When it's new, it's exciting. You got hormones, you got chemistry, you got lust, you got all that, like that built up excitement for each other. Like that part of, are we going to see each other? Like we both want to see each other. We both want to explore this. Like that should be clear and simple. Yeah. And I'm like, when the beginning is so clunky and hard and yucky feeling interspersed with some good feeling, like that needs to be a sign, yeah. Right? That this is probably not going to go anywhere good consistently when the beginning is already so hard. Yeah. And so, yes, I learned, do not try to shove my foot into the boot.
For sure. The entry should be clean and easy. It should feel soft and welcoming. It should be comfortable to walk around in. There should be no concern until you hit a challenge on the slopes, at which point you might hope that the boot is supportive and helpful.
Yes, right? And it's interesting, as I hear you speak, I remember that I used to have a history of buying shoes that looked so pretty. And like they looked quite nice in that very moment, but already I knew I was feeling like this doesn't feel that good. And it already didn't feel that good just to have my foot in it, let alone put all my weight on it, let alone walk all day, wear them all day, run around. Totally. But I was like, but it's so pretty.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this is such a good analogy for this reason. And I'm thinking generationally now of teachers in high school who would have been in their like 60s, maybe when I was, say, 14. And this was a thing. I don't know that it's a thing anymore, but women in North America anyway used to have feet that were all mangled with like bunions, and they're misshapen into the shape of a high-heeled shoe in the front. Do you remember this? Have you encountered this?
Yes, and I remember this like all the mums would have their outside the house shoes, like the work shoes, and then their ugly running shoes under the desk, right? Exactly. And but these days, those ugly running shoes are what people wear outside with their fancy outfits. Yeah. That's the trend. Right. But those used to be the ones in the plastic shopping bag that you'd see women carry to work.
Right? So this is like generational trauma. I'll just be a little bit flippant with that term, but this is something that we're so conditioned into that's normal. I remember when I first started real estate and I had ideas about how I needed to present myself, which included high-heeled shoes. And I went through so many different types of high-heeled shoes until I found the one that I could wear the longest without being in like excruciating pain. And so I got a whole bunch of those, and I wore them to all my open houses and showings and whatever. And one day this Brazilian woman came in and she looked at my shoes and she went, "Oh God, I don't know how you do that. We don't do that." Like she was representing all of Brazil's women. And I was like, you can not do this? Like I could have shown up without these and that would have been fine and professional to you. And I genuinely had no idea because we're so conditioned into this.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm making the connection that there was a time in my life where it was very common to voluntarily pay my hard-earned money to buy shoes that don't feel comfortable and commit to wearing them around all day long. And I firmly believe that me living that story contributed to me staying in relationships that didn't feel good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? There was some inner dialogue that says, you're just supposed to suck it up. It's okay if it feels crappy. There's some elements of this that are good. And
Yeah.
that's an okay way to go through life.
Right. And we get super crafty with that too, right? This shoe is beautiful. It's not comfortable. I can add a little bit of moleskin right here. I can like stuff a 2x4 in there and push it in this perfect angle that'll make a little bit more room for my toe over here. I can just not walk anywhere. I can wear Band-Aids. The ways we contort ourselves into this are so significant. And I have so much to say about the boots still and your interaction with the man and how this all relates. So it's pretty common, I'd say, for us to try to make something work, right? Instead of going, how could this feel good? We go, how can I make this work, right? Which is all part of this mentality that we're talking about. So this boot, which is our relationships, you notice it looks good. You really want to get your foot in there, but it's just not happening. So you could have at that point, especially if this was a relationship, you could have poured some grease in the boot to ease the entry, which would also have like kind of ruined the boot and made the boot all manky, right? The man, when you said this isn't happening, bless him, he said, you're right. He could have said, no, we have to make this work. And then he could have injured yourself. You could have broken the boot trying to get it on your foot.
Yeah, because we both could have been like, but it should fit. There's no reason why it shouldn't fit. It's your size. It's a well-constructed boot. It's this brand name that has a good reputation. Like, your foot should be able to get into this, right? And as you say this, as I'm hearing you speak, I realize how much relief I felt in my body. Not that I needed his validation, but for him to say, yeah, well, then it's a no. Right? I was like, yes, it's a total no. Like, we don't need to, like, it was done so quickly. It wasn't, well, are you sure? And like, he wasn't questioning. I wasn't questioning. It was like, well, this is obviously a no. This needs to be a no.
And it's so simple. At any point, did you think, oh, gee, there must be something wrong with my foot that this great boot doesn't fit?
There was a tiny moment where I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, it wasn't, there must be something wrong with me, but it was more surprise of like, oh, I wouldn't have anticipated that I couldn't even get my foot in. Like, I would have thought, oh, maybe it's not super comfortable. So I was surprised by that. But I think an old version of myself would have just still tried to push through and been like, well, obviously this must be something wrong with me and my foot or how I'm trying to put it on. There's must be a different way. Right. And no, I was just like, I was so impressed with myself for how quickly I came to, this is a no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going to try anymore. Like, it's just a no. Like, we can put this one away already. It's not going to be this one.
Right. And that's an interesting trajectory too, because in the past it might have been like, I'm pretty sure it's a no, but I'm going to try every angle for half an hour.
Let me try it anyways. Let me try a little bit longer. For sure. That would have been me. Let me try what if I unlaced the whole thing? And then try, what if I tried a thinner sock? What if, all the things.
All of that. A pantyhose. Yeah. And this is all the beautiful lessons that, like, this is how we get to now, where a no can be easy, is by having tried on all of those other boots and ways of putting on boots.
Yes. Right. And so this is like, I want to say this too. We work with a lot of people who have struggled a lot and who feel exasperated, and they just want to be able to get to this place and think, and sometimes be really hard on themselves of, why am I not at this place yet? And part of it is to shift the way we look at things and to realize, oh, this is being at this place is a byproduct of practicing a lot of things that seem completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Right. And getting to know your inner yes, your inner no. What does it feel like in your body to force something? I didn't really know what that felt like before because it was so normal to me.
Totally.
Right. But like when I started doing things in my life that didn't feel forced, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is how it feels to have some ease. Huh. Interesting. See, like, I truly believe this boot thing and this relationship thing, like they're all tied together. If I was still in that place of let me wear the most uncomfortable shoes possible as long as they look nice or they're on sale, then I really believe like I wouldn't be choosing relationships in the same way, choosing a partner in the same way, because there's still some part of my old story that says it's okay to suffer. If some part of it is good, just suck it up.
Suffer. Well, and this is not to say throw the whole thing out either, that it needs to be perfect, right? You might have a pair of shoes that are your favorite pair of shoes and they're perfect in every way. And then the strap breaks and you're like, you know what? I'm absolutely going to repair this strap with whatever you need to repair it with, even if it's not ideal, because you love it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of like even shoes that you're like, this is not going to be my everyday shoe. If I were trying to force it into my everyday shoe, I'm going to be very unhappy.
Yeah.
But if this is like a once in a while shoe and I see it as a once in a while shoe, we could have a great relationship, right? Don't try to make a once in a while shoe into your everyday shoe. It's going to cause a life of misery.
Yeah. And, you know, we love these analogies because I think they really bring home what we're trying to point out. But more literally, we are in relationship with everything. When you put your shoe on, that's a relationship you're in. And if there's any parts of it that are uncomfortable for you, the only person who can know that is yourself. And you're the first line of protection and of ease in creating more of that for yourself. Sometimes people can help. Maybe a guy can go get you a different shoe, but the shoe is on your foot, and what are you going to do with it?
And like also, this reminds me of like, what if the shoe fits perfectly for somebody else and somebody right next to you trying on the exact same one with the same foot size as you thinks it's the best shoe ever, best boot ever, feels amazing. And then do we judge ourselves that I must have a, really fat foot that can't fit in the shoe? And all of a sudden there we spiral again, right? Because it works for someone else. It should work for us.
Yeah. Well, now the shoe that doesn't fit, I want it even more.
I also want to say this is a big life lesson for me because I had a habit of trying to force things that weren't feeling okay. And I had a habit of ignoring things at the beginning.
Yes.
I had a habit of like thinking, like I'm such a, is this the word perseverant person? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
That I'm like, I think I can make anything work. Right. And like, that's very good if you're trying to survive some horrible situation and like not so great for like wanting to create a really fulfilling relationship with someone.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. There's, especially at the beginning, there's going to be a lot of comparison, right? You're comparing, oh, is this better than when I felt alone and lonely? Is this better than the ex who did X, Y, and Z, or, was ways that drove me nuts or whatever it is. And we go, oh, well, this feels better than that. So this must be a good feeling. Right. And then you can accumulate those enough until you're in love and you don't even notice that what you're in is an uncomfortable situation where things don't feel good. Things that you can't actually enjoy in the long term, but that felt better than whatever the painful situation was before.
Yeah. And like realizing that that's valuable. It's valuable to know this felt better than before. And this doesn't mean this is the thing for me.
Yeah.
Right. Both of those can be true. And right now we're comparing shoes and boots to like intimate relationships. But I think it holds true for where you want to live, right? Like what kind of job, like who you're working with, who you're friends with. It's like all of the things and people we're in relationship with. Like, are you trying to, is the universe telling you the boot doesn't fit?
Right. Yeah.
Right at the get-go already. And I also want to highlight that sometimes we have different patterning where you just deem every boot to suck before you try it on.
Yep.
Right? Or you like sort of stick your foot in and you're like, yeah, no, this is not it. Right. So I think it's important to, with compassion, notice what our patterns are. If you tend to find something wrong with every boot before you even try, that's a different protective mechanism that you're using, right? And maybe you don't want to go boot free forever, but if you find something wrong with every single boot everywhere, that might be good to become aware of. And you might realize maybe I need to be a little bit more open-minded. Maybe I need to try, maybe the different brand, maybe change the size, maybe unlace it a little bit, whatever. But like we all have different muscles to grow.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. And mine is don't try to shove your foot in a boot that doesn't fit.
Yeah, seriously. There's another angle of this sweet analogy. I'm sure everyone can relate to going clothes shopping, finding nothing, finding something that's sort of okay if I took it in here and if I raised this hem and if I dyed it a different color.
So much. It's sort of okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just need to leave with something or I'll be unhappy. And maybe you're a seamstress. Maybe these are actually reasonable things that you're actually going to undertake. But maybe you're like me and you just end up then with a closet full of clothes that you don't love and that you're never going to make into a loving relationship with a man. And noticing that, right? How many things in the beginning of a relationship do you perhaps unconsciously or perhaps consciously go, oh, well, I don't love that, but I can change it.
Yes. Yeah. And like how successful are you at actively changing that? And what does that do to your relationship and the dynamic? And what does that do to your level of attraction to someone and your level of respect and admiration for someone? Like, yeah, sure. Like, depending on the mix and who you've chosen and, you know, the strategies you want to use to try to change someone, maybe you actually do change that person. But like, do you actually feel as drawn to them, right? After that change? Or is there just this period of like feeling like, well, I won that, I should feel good.
Yeah. And now this thing that I wanted to be different. Yeah, because it's pretending to be something it isn't. There's something in there for me that I have not yet had the opportunity to sort through, which is to do with change or requests that are quite reasonable. My default is just to be like, oh, well, that's the way they are. That's the way they are, you know? I remember you dating someone who you were like, this man is wonderful, but his clothing is appalling and I need to do something about it. And I remember thinking like, well, good luck with that. Like, people don't change, babe. And he did, you know, he did. And so that's the sort of thing where it would never occur to me to ask for this change, which may or may not be a reasonable request or a welcome request. And where might I be able to hone that to make things more comfortable for me or more hot or whatever it is.
I think this is great. I don't know. I'm like, should I say this now or should we just make this into another episode? Like the part of, hey, like I have preferences in relationship. Should I voice this to my partner? What if I think they're so great already? Like, are these things just so minor that are like ridiculous to bring up? But then like, what about the perspective of like, what if the other person would happily change up those things because they really don't matter to them and they have no idea how they're impacting you, and they'd be delighted to change those things if, you know, if that made a difference for you. That is interesting to consider as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like that for an episode. Neat. Well, is there anything else you want to say about boot or clothes or relationship?
I love my new boots.
Oh, good.
They feel so good. My feet feel so good putting them on, taking them off. They feel very good during. However, okay, I want to point this out. So I went on Sunday actually with my new boots. And they weren't like perfect in the sense of like my feet had to get used to them. Like as I was turning, I had to get used to like how much do I have to tighten them, where exactly, in order for it to like give me enough support to turn, but give me enough movement to like be able to like move freely. And what I noticed was it didn't feel fantastic. Like elements felt better, but elements were the period that we were in of learning each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's different. That's different. Like those bumps are different than I'm trying to force my foot into the boot and it doesn't even go in. Yeah. Right? This is like, hey, I've sort of vetted, I've given it some time, I've noticed these things feel good, like it's probably going to work. But we're going to also need to give ourselves time to get to know each other, like fine tune things, tweak things. Yeah. But that feels very different. That feels like at the end of the day, I'm like, that feels really nice, right? Like, and as the day progressed, it felt nicer and nicer because I was like tweaking it just in the ways where we could work together well.
Amazing.
That's what I like about, you know, like this analogy is exactly like relationship of, it doesn't mean once you've chosen someone who's the right person that everything is easy and smooth sailing. Like you're going to have bumps. You're going to need to learn each other. But that's very different than trying to force something that is showing you from the very beginning. There's probably misalignment here.
Hallelujah.
It took me a long time to learn.
I bet. Yeah, things I wish they taught us in kindergarten. Well, we tied, and I specifically did not like the feeling of having shoes taken on and off my feet. Like it's hard to put a shoe on a kid and not like reef on their ankle weirdly, or all of that felt some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really neat for me to, as a mom raising a sensory sensitive kid, because I chose not to battle it out with him when he was young. Like when he's at 2 years old, like up until 2 years old, I could dress him up in the cutest outfits, like so cute. And then all of a sudden, like he had words and I don't know, felt more or something. And he's like, no, mommy, only comfy pants. Comfy pants only. So this kid went from like 2 years old to like literally 13 years old before he ever wore another pair of pants with a button on them.
Wow.
And even like his last year, I posted in the hockey mom chat because what was it? I think he started refereeing for lacrosse. And so he needed black, like sort of dress pants. And I'm like, dude, like you're going to have to wear pants. And we ended up going for like splurging a little and getting him a Lululemon pair of pants. But he's like, I can wear these ones, Mom. These ones feel comfortable. Amazing. But like I remember texting in the mom chat. I'm like, hallelujah. First time my kid's worn like a pants with buttons since he was 2 years old. But this is a kid who was very clear and adamant from a very young age of that doesn't feel good for my body and I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And so when you said, oh, I wish we learned this in kindergarten, it's really neat to watch children who have been given the freedom and permission to listen to their bodies and not be shamed for it or made wrong or, you know, made to just do what everybody else feels is fine, that they feel pretty confident saying, that doesn't feel good for me. I don't want to do that. Right. And yeah, we got an opposite thing to teach him that like not everything's going to feel good. And sometimes you're going to have to do some things that don't feel great. But it's very different being around a kid who just has the energy of, I'm going to tell you honestly what feels good and what doesn't. Like, oh, it's very refreshing. Right.
That's my wish for everyone. Yeah. Would that we could all know what feels good for us and what doesn't and know how to express it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks, Gigi. You got a closing practice in mind?
I'm just wiggling my foot. So I'm going to go with see what part of you wants to move. And then I notice my other foot is really enjoying like my right foot is I'm sitting sort of with my right foot under my left thigh. So there's the pressure of my thigh on my foot. So noticing whether a part of you wants to be able to move or a part of you wants to feel some deep pressure. And what could add an element of pleasantness to this moment for you?
Oh, it's so good to have an answer to that isn't like, whatever. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't care. Yes.
Yeah.
Right? If we get more confident in like knowing, which is just all through practice, of what could I do right now that makes this moment a little bit more pleasant, all of our relationships would change.
Right. And for God's sake, don't introduce that in a relationship in the middle of like a conflict. What's one thing that could make this moment better? Practice it with your boots that you're putting on,
Yes.
Practice it in the way you make and eat your sandwich. Low stakes.
Low stakes. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. That's it then, huh?
I'm looking at my plant, but I'll say more next time.
Oh, is it the plant that looks like this?
The plant that is going like this now.
Oh, so you want some food? Yeah.
Well, he's actually, or she's actually quite sturdy, and its leaves are going like this.
Ah, very nice.
Oh, and a little bit like this. You can't see mine. A little bit like this.
Impersonations of plants. Well, we've done that.
Yeah.
Fun. There's mine.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Gigi, and thank you everybody for joining us. That's it for this week. We will see you next week. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.